Khenpo Sodargye Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche.
The profound and subtle Dharma is rarely encountered in eons. Now that I can hear, receive, and uphold it, may I fully understand the true meaning of the Tathagata. In order to liberate all sentient beings, let us all give rise to the unsurpassed bodhicitta. Today we will continue discussing with the Heart Essence, my heart's advice. Then, tomorrow, we will start to learn Nectar Drops of Advice. As for this particular Nectar Drops of Advice by Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche, it seems there are many different translations available online. Some even say that I translated it myself in the past, but I have no recollection of that. So this time I have carefully and thoroughly retranslated it as well. Tomorrow there will be just one single class. On Saturday, Sunday, and also Monday, there will be absolutely no classes whatsoever on my end for these 3 consecutive days. After that, we'll see how things go naturally. This time, we're going to discuss the Heart Essence, my heart's advice, together in this particular special session today. I'll recite the oral transmission in Tibetan for everyone present attentively, and then explain it in Chinese clearly in detail for you all listening right now here very carefully. Yesterday, there was a passage that I didn't finish reciting for the transmission. So today, a little bit later on, we will certainly get to that particular part. The content we're covering today includes taking refuge, generating bodhicitta, and the important practice of confession. After that, we will thoroughly discuss the generation stage and the completion stage, as well as the profound concepts of primordial purity and spontaneous accomplishment. The microphone's sound this time keep fluctuating between loud and soft. It seemed like it was the same just now when they were chanting. Sometimes the sound is especially loud, and sometimes it feels like the chanting isn't as strong as before. You can't hear the voices of the monastic assembly, and the person who is leading the chant is just way too very loud. That's also a bit of an issue. In just a moment, we will learn the generation stage and the subsequent completion stage together here. You see, now it's gone again. The generation stage and completion stage, including the primordial purity of Dzogchen and so on, those who haven't received empowerment might be better off not listening to this part, even though there are only 3 or 4 verses. According to the profound requirements of Vajrayana, one must have properly received empowerment to listen to the sacred tantric teachings. Anyone who has received tantric empowerment should be allowed to listen. Of course, the earlier parts, taking refuge, generating bodhicitta, and confessing negative actions, these 3 verses can be listened to by anyone. After that, you can decide based on your own situation. Of course, if you do listen, there probably won't be any major faults. For example, with the hearing liberation teachings, basically even sentient beings above the level of animals can readily and easily receive them. Generally speaking, if one hasn't received empowerment, one shouldn't practice or listen to these teachings, mainly because the individual might potentially develop incorrect or misguided views. It is with this significant concern, and for this very important reason, such restrictions are set. But in any case, generally speaking, when it comes to listening to and practicing Vajrayana teachings, there is usually an empowerment beforehand. This is a basic rule in Vajrayana Buddhism. Because I wanted to provide a complete explanation of the meaning of the Heart Essence, my heart's advice, this time for everyone. So this time I will cover everything. Originally, it would have been more appropriate to give an empowerment first, and then continue with the teaching. But when His Holiness, the wish-fulfilling jewel, taught it, he didn't do it that way either. So this time we should trust that approach. Basically, over 99% are people who have already received empowerment. As we discuss the Heart Essence, my heart's advice today, everyone is also aware that yesterday the Heart Essence, my heart's advice, was divided into the beginning, the middle, and the end sections. Then the middle section is further divided into the basis of the path and the actual practice of the path. The basis of the path involves carefully eliminating adverse conditions and diligently relying on favorable conditions. Then the actual practice of the path is divided into the stages of the path. There is a brief explanation of the stages of the path and a detailed explanation of the stages of practice. Then in the brief explanation of the stages of the path, it covers pure discipline, wisdom born from hearing, wisdom born from contemplation, and wisdom born from meditation. It discusses 4 main points. Then in the detailed explanation of the stages of practice, that covers the common preliminaries and the uncommon preliminaries, as well as the actual practical application methods. In the common preliminaries, it discusses the profound rarity of human life and the impermanence of all life, the infallibility of karma and the inherent faults of samsara. These 4 main points were already discussed yesterday. Today we are discussing the second main point, that is the uncommon preliminaries. These uncommon preliminaries are also further divided into 3 specific aspects: taking refuge in the 3 jewels, generating bodhicitta, and confessing negative actions and obstacles. These 3 aspects indeed are basically explained in the same way as in our own The Words of My Perfect Teacher. They are essentially one and the same. The very first and most fundamental step is taking refuge in the 3 jewels. Regarding this crucial act of taking refuge in the 3 jewels, I will now proceed to recite these 3 important verses. So today we will first talk about taking refuge. Only they have the power to lead us from this great terror, so extremely difficult to escape. No one else could save us. So we should take these 3 most precious jewels as our refuge, for they are infallible, wise, compassionate, and powerful. Earlier, we already discussed the 3 realms of samsara and the various extremely terrifying sufferings within them. In such a truly frightening and perilous environment, if we earnestly wish to attain true liberation and freedom from suffering, it is indeed not so easy or straightforward to achieve. What we commonly refer to as the continuous cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, known as samsara, is actually an immensely vast, boundless, and utterly limitless existence. If we do not have really strong, very virtuous roots within ourselves, or wholesome and good karma, generally speaking, once we are immersed in samsara, it is indeed quite challenging to attain true liberation. If we are caught up in the cycle of samsara and wish to resolve the sufferings of birth, aging, sickness, and death, indeed it is profoundly and exceptionally difficult to effectively solve these complex problems through any other conventional means, even with advanced worldly technologies or overwhelming military power, or by using the greatest worldly strengths. If we truly try to solve the profound problems of birth, aging, sickness, and death, it is truly very difficult to resolve them. Therefore, we simply cannot possibly find such a truly comprehensive and unparalleled guide anywhere else in this entire world. Whether it is dedicated teachers, profound sages, esteemed scholars, or even highly distinguished great professors, scientists, or writers, among all people and non-human beings in the world, even those with the greatest abilities and highest prestige, and the greatest wisdom, a profound method to attain complete liberation from the cycle of samsara. If they were to speak about a particular way to be truly liberated from samsara, no one would be able to explain it. If one wishes to be guided out of samsara, no one is truly able to do so. So who then can truly attain complete liberation from the endless cycle of samsara? Only the one who possesses truly infallible wisdom, immense great compassion, and profound power, such a supreme being, and the most ultimate of such beings is the Buddha. Temporarily speaking, he is also completely perfect in the Dharma and Sangha jewels. Ultimately, the Buddha is the supreme being of wisdom, compassion, and power. In fact, in terms of meaning, in a broader sense, he is also complete in the Dharma and Sangha jewels. Therefore, within samsara, if we truly wish to attain liberation, we will not find anyone else in the entire world who can truly be our refuge, our guide, or our protector. There is simply no one else. Only the 3 jewels can become our refuge, and also eventually become our very closest kin, truly becoming our most trusted and reliable guide. For this reason, what we call taking refuge in the three jewels, of course, for those who do not have faith in Buddhism, the so-called taking refuge does not hold much importance for them. It is not that significant to them. But for everyone who is all present here, whether you are lay practitioners or monastics, taking refuge in the three jewels is truly extremely important. Of course, all of us have already indeed taken refuge and have done so for many years. But in our hearts towards the entire three jewels, do we truly possess a sincere and unwavering faith that guides our spiritual path? This is indeed of the utmost and paramount importance for our spiritual development. Just a few years ago, our precious His Holiness Rinpoche graciously gave a profound teaching on the sacred three jewels in Canada, sharing his wisdom and insights, using three types of faith to correspond to the three jewels. The teaching was truly indeed quite absolutely brilliant. Last year we also studied it a bit, and I seem to have talked about it once in class as well. This year I have reorganized it again. So just as His Holiness taught, to truly develop faith in the three jewels is indeed rare. I mentioned this yesterday as well. All the content we have here, there is not a single thing that anyone does not understand. But to truly put it into practice, who knows how many people can actually embody it in their actions. We have all taken refuge in the three jewels, but when we encounter even a small problem, do we first pray to the three jewels, or do we think of other solutions first? Everyone should be fully aware of this important matter. I distinctly remember when the revered His Holiness went to Canada, there was a prominent Buddhist media outlet that conducted an interview with him. During the course of that interview, they specifically asked His Holiness a question. When you are in a bad mood, what methods do you use to resolve it? The implication was that at that time in the West, it seemed like depression and anxiety were quite serious issues. Perhaps that was what they wanted to ask about. They asked, His Holiness, do you ever feel down or in a bad mood? If you do happen to feel down, how exactly do you typically deal with it? His Holiness replied, my only way is to pray to the three jewels. I resolve it by praying to the three jewels, by sincerely, devoutly praying to the precious, sacred three jewels. Later, when His Holiness went to the West, he was interviewed twice, once in Canada and once in France. For both interviews, there were 20 questions each. His Holiness's answers seemed very simple. But after reading them later, it turns out that some of the content inside is actually very meaningful for our own personal practice. If you have the chance in the future, you can take a look as well. Later, when he was in France, His Holiness was also interviewed by them. During the interview, they specifically asked, during those particularly special years in Tibetan area, when you encountered such an immense amount of terror and danger, at that time, how did you manage to successfully resolve it? Later, the revered His Holiness then thoughtfully said, I relied solely on praying to the three jewels to overcome all of these hardships. It was through steadfastly relying on sincere prayers to the sacred three jewels that I was truly liberated. This profound statement, uttered during this challenging period of time, was also brought up when we interviewed a very famous French scholar at the time, who was also a talented writer. During the insightful interview with him, he said, what impressed me the most was when His Holiness Rinpoche, when we interviewed him, he said that during those special years, all of those difficulties were resolved by relying on the three jewels. At this very particular point in time, still even now, more than 30 long years have already passed, I still haven't forgotten. Indeed, His Holiness answered a very significant question in a simple and profound way. His Holiness's response was not merely a superficial statement intended to deal with the persistent reporters, but rather a genuine expression of his enlightened understanding. That is actually not the case. He was, how should I put it, whether he was in a bad mood or when he encountered difficulties in life or in practice. In times of such difficulties, the only thing he did was pray to the three jewels. This is something about the precious Guru that I personally feel most deeply. I also reflect on myself. For example, when I am in pain, do I first pray to the three jewels? When I encounter the greatest difficulties, do I pray to the three jewels? When I am in the really worst, most very terrible mood, do I pray to the three jewels? But I truly feel very ashamed of myself. Although sometimes I do pray to the three jewels, but at other times it seems that the power of my prayers to the three jewels is very weak. In my heart, I truly want to pray to the three jewels, but it seems that kind of deeply sincere and wholehearted and truly powerful prayer is quite difficult to achieve. The faith to entrust myself completely to the three jewels in prayer is actually quite rare. I don't know how it is for all of you here, actually taking refuge in the three jewels. I think everyone should understand this theory, so there's no need to explain it to you. But in reality, when we pray to the three jewels, compared to how the masters pray to the three jewels, there may be a certain depth that we lack. So when we encounter the terrors of samsara here, we cannot find refuge in the world, no other support. Only the three jewels who possess perfect wisdom, compassion, and power. As described in the Treatise on the Buddha Nature, the merits of the three jewels possess such qualities, are our source of refuge. Therefore, I wholeheartedly take refuge in the three jewels and pray to the three jewels. This is the meaning here. Next is the second point, generating bodhicitta. All the misery comes from wanting happiness for ourselves, and all virtue and happiness is from wishing others well. So, following the teacher of gods and human beings, generate the unsurpassed bodhicitta. Here, it is profoundly talking about our continuous cycle of samsara within the three realms of existence. That is, the desire realm, the form realm, and the formless realm. All the sufferings within the samsara of the three existences. So what is the actual source? The fundamental source is that we constantly and relentlessly seek our own personal happiness, because it is precisely from seeking our own happiness that all the unbearable and profound sufferings of samsara in the three realms truly arise. Then, all the worldly and supramundane sublime happinesses. What are they generated from? They are generated from the intention to benefit others. Just as it is stated in the Bodhikariyavatara, all suffering arises from selfishness, and all happiness arises from the intention to benefit others. This is something we should understand. We ordinary people every single day are constantly and profoundly bound by a very strong sense of self-attachment, restricting ourselves all day long. All our suffering comes entirely from this self-attachment. The Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, on the other hand, are so joyful. They truly enjoy all the worldly and transcendent forms of this utterly immaculate and great bliss, which also naturally arise from generating the unsurpassed supreme bodhicitta. This is something everyone should be very clear about. So if we truly wish to always attain happiness and to be free from all suffering, such a practitioner should follow the teacher of gods and humans, the guiding master of gods and humans, our teacher Shakyamuni Buddha, as well as the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the three times with him as the principal one. In fact, at the very beginning, they were just like us, ordinary beings. But later, they realized that the root of all suffering is selfishness, and the source of all happiness is altruistic bodhicitta. With this understanding, they gave rise to the supreme bodhicitta, and then, over the course of 3 countless eons, constantly benefited sentient beings, and ultimately manifested the fruition of perfect, complete enlightenment. Therefore, all of us present here should give rise to the unsurpassed bodhicitta. In this world, there are truly so many different ideologies, indeed so many thoughts and so many aspirations, but among them, just like a wish-fulfilling jewel, the most supreme, most wonderful and best is to give rise to bodhicitta. Of course, among us here, everyone has already generated bodhicitta and spoken about bodhicitta. We've talked about bodhicitta, dreamed about it, done everything related to it. But if it truly arises in our mind stream, when we talk about it, everyone seems to be doing quite well. Everyone can speak about it. I can, and so can you. But in our actual mind stream, to have the aspiration that for the sake of all sentient beings, both oneself and others, to attain perfect, complete enlightenment, I must attain Buddhahood. Such a mind, sometimes we have it, but sometimes it is indeed rather weak. When we encounter enemies who harbor resentment against us, or when we find ourselves in harsh environments, or when we are faced with serious illness, at such times the strength of our mind, the strength of an ordinary person's mind, is especially weak. It's very hard to bring it forth, but no matter what, in fact, the very best is bodhicitta. Just as it is stated in the first chapter of the Way of the Bodhisattva, since bodhicitta is the very best, no matter what, some people have already become monastics, some people have already become lay practitioners. In this case, we should still follow the great masters of the past, follow our lineage teachers, and follow the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. We should still give rise to bodhicitta and truly wholeheartedly benefit all sentient beings. This is indeed a truly genuine approach. With a profound and altruistic mind to benefit others, I feel that many of my own concerns become very insignificant. So everyone here Regardless of whether you have the opportunity to spread the Dharma in this life, it's hard to say. Actually, in some of the big cities, it's not quite like it is in Tibetan area. The opportunities to spread the Dharma are not necessarily that abundant, even though you have the intention. The entire surrounding environment, the whole traditional culture, and various other significant obstacles and so on, no matter what the circumstances, we should not be overly attached to ourselves and always be ready to benefit sentient beings at any time. This might be very important. If it really is the case, as I often say, that you can't find a way to benefit sentient beings, then in a quiet place, as long as you can basically sustain your own life, cultivate bodhicitta sincerely, recite more Mahayana verses about bodhicitta, and generate the intention to benefit sentient beings more often. If you choose to spend your later years in this particular way, it is also very meaningful and fulfilling. Overall, I truly think that, for example, all of us here should still have an altruistic mind and always maintain it at all times. A mind that is deeply motivated to truly benefit all sentient beings. Of course, this profound aspiration can also be said about bodhicitta, or from another perspective, from the angle of impermanence. We should always be prepared in two ways. One is to be prepared for death. As mentioned yesterday, the great enemy of death can arrive suddenly. We need to be prepared for this. Otherwise, if you are not prepared, then indeed, one day you might suddenly be told you are in the late stage of cancer, or receive a critical illness notice or a health alert. Then a practitioner may not be able to handle it and immediately fall into despair. This is unnecessary. If you have trained and prepared in advance, for example, when I was studying at Larungar, I had already prepared myself just like Milarepa did. In the past, I was afraid of death, so I went into the quiet mountains. But now in the end, I am no longer afraid of death. So when the time comes, you have the ability to face it. This is the first kind of preparation. The second kind of preparation is that each of us is only here for a short time. In the future, there will be all kinds of causes and conditions, both internal and external. At that time, you also need to be prepared. At any moment, we can leave this place. What's the big deal? I'm not saying we should make some big move right now. That's not what I mean. But actually, this kind of mindset might be better. If, due to certain unfortunate circumstances, you are very much attached to your beloved house here, to this particular place, including the teapot, including everything else, if you are very attached to the Dharma text and everything else, then when you leave, you will feel a lot of pain. But if you are always prepared to leave this life at any moment, prepared for the departure of death, when these two kinds of impermanence occur, you should be able to handle them with complete ease. You should truly have the courage to face them. So speaking for myself, it is absolutely true that I'm not just talking big. There's no need for that. None of you have really forced me or even asked me about this at all. But if death were to come to me, maybe I'm just a little bit dull, but in any case, I've already truly done my very best in this life. Other than that, if I were to stay here any longer now, I don't really have much confidence, and it's probably about enough. Someone once told me, if I were to stay a while longer now, even though my practice may not be that great, I still feel very, very happy about this, so I truly indeed want to stay here. But for me, it's nothing special. I've already made preparations. If I were to leave Larungar in terms of all kinds of conditions, for example, my current health and other aspects, I don't really have much attachment to them either. Maybe speaking for myself, among all things, my greatest attachment is to Larungar, His Holiness's precious spiritual center. But even so, if I ever need to leave, it seems like it's not a big deal either. As long as I'm here, I keep putting in effort. In the end, if impermanence comes, it doesn't really matter. So all of us here today should also truly have a profound sense of impermanence and be fully prepared for it. If you genuinely don't have to leave, that's absolutely great. But if you do indeed have to leave in your own heart, you should be ready. You should feel, I've already prepared for this. This is the training I've had before. Now it's just manifesting in daily life, that's all. Other than that, there's nothing special about it. So if we want to give rise to bodhicitta, one thing is that we must always be truly ready to benefit all sentient beings. Whenever we have the opportunity, we must always have real, tangible action, putting it into actual practice, right? Of course, when we truly have the chance to genuinely help others, there must first be some training beforehand. It seems that everyone here had some causes and conditions for this a while ago, but later on it seems like nothing came of it. For those of you who are responsible for related matters, sometimes you shouldn't just leave something as an empty promise and then let it sit there indefinitely. That's definitely not good. If there's something to be done, there should be a clear timeline, comprehensive training, and a well-defined plan. You absolutely still need to set a specific time. Don't just talk about it and then leave it hanging like that afterwards. Because going out to truly benefit all sentient beings is a wonderful opportunity for us, but at such crucial times we must always know our own limits. We truly need to possess a certain degree of wisdom ourselves. Don't be overly anxious, nor should you be too impatient or excessively slow. In fact, when others carefully look at a person, they often observe many subtle things. They may see a lot of impatience, slowness, laziness, and negativity, indolence, heedlessness, and many other negative emotions. These will all be detrimental to your dharma propagation, benefiting others, or your spiritual practice and life. So you must pay attention to this. This is what we call bodhicitta. The third important point is this. When the crystal mirror of your own mind is covered completely with the thick layer of dust that is the adventitious defilements, it's difficult for the reflection of profound, clear samadhi to appear. So strive to clean it with the pure cloth of confession's 4 powers. This is the practice of confession. Our own mind, the dharma dhatu of our mind's own awakened nature, is actually like a crystal ball without any stains or impurities, or like a perfectly polished crystal mirror, exceptionally clear, pure, both within its very essence and on its outward surface. If such a pristine and flawless crystal mirror were to become covered by some fine external dust or impurities, if the Buddha nature, the awakened quality within us, is obscured by the afflictive obscurations and cognitive obscurations, or by the obscurations of habitual tendencies, this external dust has 2 meanings. One is the external dust that obstructs us, and the other refers to temporary fine particles, for example, obscurations and stains that have already covered, that have already deeply tainted and significantly blocked us. If that is indeed the case, then what precisely becomes truly difficult to manifest and bring forth? It is the vivid and profound images of deep samadhi and the luminous, radiant images of clear samadhi. This is because within our continuous mental stream, if tainted by karmic actions from past lives or negative karma accumulated in this life, then no matter what dharma we practice or virtuous deeds we do, it will be very difficult to see the deity or for signs of accomplishment emerge in your practice. The images are hard to arise. Some say that these are the states related to profound emptiness, while others say they are the states related to vast luminosity. All these states can be considered a kind of samadhi, just like in the Shurangama samadhi. The samadhis described there are the same as these. It is very difficult for the images of these samadhis to arise. Therefore, everyone present here should rely on the 4 powers of purification, which everyone knows about. The profound power of reliance, the undeniable power of deep regret, the unwavering power of firm resolution, and the crucial power of effective antidote. In the sacred practice of Vajrasattva, these 4 essential opponent powers are likened here to a piece of white cloth. For example, your crystal ball or crystal mirror, if it becomes stained or completely covered by other undesirable defilements, then you use a white cloth to wipe it clean. It becomes very clean and clear. In this particular way, the images that are inside can easily and clearly appear vividly. In the same way, our mind stream, if it is obscured by various obstacles, it is impossible for your meditative experiences to manifest. So nowadays, many people think, I've practiced Guru Yoga for so many years. I've practiced deity yoga for so many years. I've been so diligent during Dharma assemblies, but I haven't even had a single good dream. Why is that? Is it because what the Guru taught is wrong? Or is it that this Dharma is not supreme, or the deity lacks blessing power? All sorts of thoughts arise. That's not the case. It's because your karmic obscurations are heavy. If your negative karma is heavy and you haven't properly confessed and purified it, then it's difficult for meditations to manifest. Therefore, at all times and in all places, we should rely on the 4 opponent powers to confess and purify. The great masters of the past, as explained in The Words of My Perfect Teacher, disciples of Patrul Rinpoche and Jigme Nyugu Rinpoche, everyone recited the Vajrasattva mantra millions of times. If we think about our 100,000 recitations of the Vajrasattva mantra and the 400,000 preliminary practices, sometimes feels difficult for many people, but each of us needs to confess and purify. Precisely because of this, His Holiness set the rule in the past that every year we should recite the Vajrasattva mantra 400,000 times in order to purify our mind stream. In this way, our practice can truly and indeed be successful and ultimately effective when everyone has such an opportunity to make aspirations and sincerely confess together with the Sangha using such a supreme mantra as Vajrasattvas. To begin to counteract the afflictions in our own mind stream, we must confess our own negative karma and obscurations. Next, I will talk about the main practice. The main practice consists of the outer generation stage, which involves visualization and purification, the inner completion stage, focusing on subtle energy work and transformation, and the profound secret great perfection, aiming for ultimate realization. These are divided into three distinct aspects: the outer, the inner, and the secret. First, regarding the outer generation stage, what follows truly belongs to the Tantric teachings.
Mamcher Gumba Dika Jirshi, such a Jesus and La Wonjurum, Ligim Tranquility, Desser Mertox and Gini, Gosser Jimmy La Wonjer, Zorum Tiki Tiller, Timber, Ning and Balabra Turkos, Tajirkurguchi, Jonka, Yangzan, Yantik, Nimi Goncham, Bam, Nimi Zencham, Nimi Zencham, but Taxum Tabden Kurti, Jamra. The first is the outer generation stage. As for the generation stage, everyone should also know what exactly is the generation stage. In fact, when practicing the generation stage, one visualizes that all inner and outer phenomena, both environment and beings, are pure. Generally, in the Guhyagarbha Tantra, there are many lines of reasoning used to establish this. For example, we can consider reasoning that is based on a single isolated cause, or the application of scriptural logic, direct sensory perception, the concept of divine blessings, and various other approaches. These reasoning are utilized to thoroughly establish that all phenomena, without exception, are inherently and fundamentally pure in their very essence. This is the view that is established. Once you have this view, you completely and fully recognize yourself deeply and clearly as the deity, if you are indeed the deity. You first actualize this through such reasoning, and once it is actualized, your body is the body of the deity. Your speech is the mantra of the deity, and your mind is inseparable from the wisdom dharmadhatu of the deity. Ultimately, you can actualize this kind of self-generated mandala of the deity. This is a practice of the generation stage. In fact, the practice of the generation stage is discussed extensively in our Guhyagarbha Tantra. It is explained in detail, and in our Vajrayana practices, every deity practice also includes this. Of course, this requires a view of primordial purity. If you don't have a solid foundation in this view, it will be difficult to practice. If you think, I am not Manjushri Bodhisattva, and you visualize yourself as Manjushri Bodhisattva, then just as it is said in the Beacon of Certainty, it's like using an impure vessel to visualize something pure. It is meaningless. In essence, everything is the pure and sacred mandala of the deity. You simply recognize it as such. Once you successfully do this, practicing the generation stage will indeed be very successful. Here, when we practice deity yoga, we should first clearly understand that all appearances, all sounds, and all consciousnesses are, in essence, the deity, mantra, and the nature of reality. You come to know this through various reasonings, whether through logical analysis or the pith instructions of the guru. You realize that all the appearances we now perceive are the form of the deity, the form of the guru. Everything appears as empty of inherent existence. There is nothing with any real substance. All sounds are the sound of the deity's mantra. They are inseparable and indistinguishable. Just as it is explained in the Guhyagarbha Tantra, all of these conceptual thoughts, including your attachment, your anger, your ignorance, and so on, these are in actual fact the profound wisdom Vajra of the deity. In other words, they are truly inseparable from the wisdom of the dharmadhatu themselves. When you have this kind of view, and without in any way departing from this particular view, then your dedicated practice and your deliberate actions are truly like a precisely aimed arrow. This finely crafted arrow, when released with intention, the archer carefully, through his outstretched fingers, and through his powerful, expertly crafted bow, he skillfully shoots the arrow directly at the precisely designated target. In precisely the same manner, when I have this profound and comprehensive view of the three purities, then my spiritual practice and all of my subsequent actions, both internal and external, are carried out in accordance with this pure view. The meaning here is that the arrow is truly a powerful metaphor. This is because, as for the arrow, the archer's operation, that is to say, his actions, cannot indeed be separated from it. In precisely the same way, all of our spiritual practice and all of our actions cannot be separated from the profound view we have established beforehand.
Once you have such a complete mandala of the three purities, then your practice and your view will also naturally follow from that profound view. If this is indeed the case, then the processes of subduing and gathering are accomplished with remarkable ease, and absolutely everything is handled skillfully. All acts of subduing, which involves bringing others under one's influence or control and gathering others, can all be performed with exceptional ease and skill. Here, when it comes to subduing, all of these acts of pacifying and controlling, which includes calming and managing situations or individuals, whether it's enemies or evil spirits, none of these pose any problem at all. As for all acts of gathering, whether it's people, gods, or even your own mind, there's nothing difficult about any act you wish to gather. In fact, to sum up, all activities of pacifying, increasing, magnetizing, and subjugating are accomplished without any obstacles. If you practice the generation stage well, all activities of pacifying, increasing, magnetizing, and subjugating can be accomplished very easily. That's the point here. This is what happens when we generally practice the generation stage, whether we do Mahasadhana or when we practice the deity in our daily practice. As long as it's genuinely based on this fundamental kind of understanding, then it should be acceptable. And we begin our practice and conduct accordingly, then in the end, the result will also be the unobstructed accomplishment of the four great activities. This is the first point. The second stage of inner completion practice. The verse of the inner completion practice is, if you can generate bliss, clarity, and non-thought as means of support through the techniques of diligently controlling prana and adopting physical postures, you will come to master the illusory body of clear light. So it's right that you allow the perfection stage to penetrate your mind. It's a specialized term. Actually, the controlling prana mentioned in the verse refers to the winds, channels, and drops. But here, according to some terminology from the Kalachakra Tantra, this prana refers to the wind. This diligently specifically means diligent activity, which precisely refers to the various channels involved, and controlling refers to the drops. In other words, relying on the illusory body wheel of winds, channels, and drops. One practices using a kind of illusory wheel of the body. In the Great Perfection Manjushri teachings, there is also a specific practice for the completion stage. Everyone should remember this as well. First, one visualizes oneself in an ordinary, mundane form. Then, through the Tammo practice, one completely burns away one's impure body, leaving nothing behind. In the end, one transforms into Manjushri Bodhisattva. Within the entire body, one visualizes the three channels and four wheels. From the top of the head, nectar descends through the syllable hang. Then all the petals of the channels are completely filled with nectar. Gradually, one truly begins to attain the profound wisdom of the four joys and the four voids. This understanding slowly unfolds. This is a method regarding the generation stage just mentioned. It is a practice of visualizing the deity through pure perception. As for the completion stage, it has its own methods of skillful means for self-practice, as well as methods of skillful means involving another's body. Generally speaking, when it comes to self-practice, one relies on the inherent power of one's own winds, energy channels, and vital essence drops, and then engages in the practice. After practicing, if you are truly able to attract this profound and radiant light, or if you can successfully obtain the unwavering support of clear bliss in the state of non-conceptuality, or if your own subtle winds, intricate channels, and precious essence drops are perfectly accompanied by the profound wisdom of luminosity and the experience of great bliss, as well as the wisdom of non-conceptuality, if these aspects support and complement each other, if these aspects mutually support and assist one another, then it becomes very easy to give rise to the luminous body and the illusory body, and to attain mastery. As for this principle, as His Holiness said, this verse is based on the practice of Kalachakra. Mipham Rinpoche has some concise practices of Kalachakra. When we wrote the commentary before, it was mainly according to the practice of Kalachakra. Actually, as for the completion stage, there are also the practices of Guhya, Samaja, Yamantaka, and some other tantras that can also correspond to it. If you practice the methods of winds, channels, and drops in this way, then in the very end, you will also certainly attain complete mastery over the profound illusory body and the radiant luminous body. Therefore, it is absolutely essential that we diligently practice the profound completion stage. This crucial completion stage should be integrated deeply and thoroughly into our hearts, practiced regularly and firmly engraved in our minds. Or, to integrate this practice into your very own mind, you can consider these steps. This simple practice. is also found within the profound Great Perfection Manjushri. There is also the extensive Treasury of Supreme Vehicles, which contains quite a lot of these important teachings. So, what are we talking about here? Just now we discussed the outer and inner, the generation stage and the completion stage. The profound Great Perfection is essentially divided into two distinct and crucial aspects. One is the vital exhortation to diligently practice Dzogchen, and the second is the actual direct experience and realization of Dzogchen itself. These are broadly divided into two significant aspects. Firstly, the exhortation to diligently practice Dzogchen, and secondly, the actual profound Dzogchen practice itself. They are divided into two. The first is the exhortation to practice Dzogchen. Have we finished reciting this part? Yes, we've recited this part, right? When the darkness of the 5 degenerations prevails, it is hard for the starlight of the 8 lower yanas to banish it. So shine the light of the Nyingtik sun with its 100,000 rays, all drawn along by the swift carriage of the 3 kinds of faith. Here it says that in our degenerate age, the 5 degenerations, the gradual degeneration of all beings, the degeneration of their lifespan, the degeneration of all afflictions, the degeneration of their views, and the degeneration of the entire era. The darkness of the 5 degenerations is especially rampant, and at this time it is particularly severe. Right now, our views as sentient beings are poor, our lifespans are short, and our afflictions are especially heavy. This is degenerate age of the 5 impurities. Degenerate age of the 5 impurities, whether it's ourselves or others, is very impure, and we can understand the reasons for this, right? Because this world is just too defiled and degenerate. In the past, like in the time of the Buddha, people would easily attain enlightenment or quickly achieve the state of an arhat. Now our views are also poor and our afflictions are heavy. Our human lifespans are quite short. There are many adverse conditions and all sorts of other significant issues. At this time, among the other 8 vehicles, the Shravakayana, Pratyekabuddhayana, and Bodhisattvayana, and furthermore, in addition to these, also the outer Tantra, Kriya Tantra, Karya Tantra, and Yoga Tantra, these 3 vehicles, and above these, Mahayoga and Anu Yoga. In total, there are 8 vehicles. In our 9-vehicle system, not counting the highest, Dzogchen, there are 8 other vehicles. This includes both the exoteric and esoteric traditions. In other words, all the teachings of the exoteric schools and the esoteric schools, including those teachings below Tang esotericism, are actually like the light of the stars. They can hardly dispel the darkness of the 5 defilements. Take the night of the 29th, for good example, or the evening of the 28th. The sky is pitch black. This kind of darkness envelops the whole world. At such a time, it is very difficult to dispel the darkness using the light of the stars. So what can be used to dispel this kind of darkness? In fact, it is the most secret heart essence. That is to say, the most supreme and secret aspect of Dzogchen. As described in The Heart Drop of the Guru, the most secret heart essence of Dzogchen is truly like a brilliant sun radiating 10,000 glorious rays of light. And how can this magnificent sun be obtained? According to Indian legend, in fact, the radiant sun god relies entirely upon 7 splendid and vigorous horses to pull his celestial chariot across the sky, bringing light to the world. And then this celestial entity begins its journey, traveling throughout the entire world. Those powerful horses, strong and mighty horses, carry or pull the magnificent chariot, and on the chariot is the brilliant sun, the radiant brilliant sun, which illuminates the whole world, the whole vast world. Just now, didn't we use the sun as a metaphor for Dzogchen? So what exactly does this magnificent sun truly rely on to be brought forth into our world? It profoundly relies on the 3 distinct kinds of faith: pure faith, aspiring faith, and unwavering faith. It is truly through profound faith that the sacred Dzogchen teachings can be effectively brought into the deepest darkness of the mind. So, all the pervasive obstacles of the 5 defilements and the encompassing darkness, only the pure Dzogchen practice can truly and completely purify them. This crucial point, in actual fact, when the revered His Holiness Rinpoche went to the Western world, he cited many scriptural sources and also explained many principles. If you have the chance in the future, you should take a look yourselves. It really seems that, just like the Westerners of the past, people in our very bustling and vibrant big cities today may find Dzogchen to be the most suitable. There are many who have great faith in Dzogchen. Indeed, many people are like this. I used to think that if Dzogchen were not taught, perhaps it would be better, at least in terms of one's own practice and other aspects. Not teaching it seemed best, but later I thought most people have especially strong faith in Dzogchen. When His Holiness went to the West, indeed, many Dzogchen teachings at that time were transmitted quite extensively. The Great Perfection Manjushri was transmitted 5 times. The Jetsun Dzogchen was also transmitted, as was the Khandro Nyingtik Dzogchen, and the Great Garuda Spreads Its Wings was also transmitted. In just 3 months, it seemed that teachings we had been unable to receive here for decades, teachings that we had not obtained for many years, were all transmitted within that relatively short 3-month period of time. This time, I have carefully and thoroughly compiled all of them together, and altogether it amounts to about 200,000 words. There is quite a lot of text. It should be published in 2 volumes, upper and lower. So within this, it really seems that there are some aspects of His Holiness's teachings. Especially when he spoke about Dzogchen, His Holiness had a particularly free and unrestrained manner, as if he could completely master it with ease. There wasn't the slightest hesitation, not even a trace. He could take what he had preserved in his mind stream for so many years, all these things he had safeguarded, and share them directly with everyone just like that. There was a very special and profound significance to this particular undertaking, so throughout the entire long winter season I also spent a great deal of my personal time and considerable effort on it. I wrote it in Tibetan, and the Tibetan version was also translated into Chinese. I also actively encouraged our dedicated English team to translate it into English and Japanese as well. Perhaps over time there will be many favorable conditions for this. Maybe there will be, maybe there won't. In any case, it is indeed true that Dzogchen in this current degenerate age is widely considered to be the very best teaching. If one does not receive Dzogchen, it is rather a significant pity. If one truly receives the profound teachings of Dzogchen and is able to practice it with dedication, one should be able to completely cut through all suffering and afflictions, even if one cannot practice. There is liberation through hearing, seeing, touching, and remembering. Indeed, this is extremely important. So everyone present here should consider themselves very fortunate. Last year, thanks to various favorable causes and conditions and other beneficial elements, most of us here have received the empowerment and transmission of 4 sections of the Heart Essence. Now, as long as you have not given up, including bringing along the soul air of the Doctrine Tantra text. Originally, I wanted this year to finish both commentaries on soul air of the Doctrine Tantra, but then I felt impermanence. What if impermanence strikes? So I first worked on His Holiness's Journey to the West, which I call a Journey to the West. I have compiled these profound teachings into a written form, so as for my soul air of the Doctrine Tantra, these are still not fully translated yet. But I do plan to set aside some dedicated time in the near future to diligently finish translating the remaining portions of it. So as mentioned here, darkness cannot be dispelled by the light of stars. Only the light of the sun can do it. According to Indian tradition, the light of the sun is brought into this world by being drawn by 7 horses. But for us, when it comes to Dzogchen, it is through faith that we can bring forth Dzogchen. Without faith, no matter how much wisdom or ability you have, no matter what you possess, it won't work. So it is through faith that is guided to the Dzogchen teachings. In this way, even in the darkness of the 5 degenerations, it is still possible to attain liberation. For example, this year we interviewed many Westerners, and their faith in the Guru is still very strong. For many, it was their first time meeting him, and also their last time seeing him. But after meeting His Holiness, many people felt he was Manjushri Bodhisattva. One person said every time he practiced the Manjushri practice for many years, and during the Guru's empowerment, he felt the Guru was Manjushri Bodhisattva. There was one person who had practiced Vajrayogini for 13 long years. Then, during His Holiness's sacred empowerment, he saw that it was truly Vajrayogini. So sometimes for us, it may look like crying or making a fuss, a bit emotional with some faith. But in actual fact, Westerners are very rational. It may seem like they aren't that passionately enthusiastic about it, but they still have very firm faith. Even when you ask them after more than 30 years, they always feel that His Holiness is definitely no different from Manjushri Bodhisattva, or no different from some Buddha. Having this kind of faith, in fact, truly for oneself, no matter which Guru or His Holiness Rinpoche it is, if you have firm faith, it is extremely beneficial for your realization. Next is the second part, discussing the true Great Perfection in 2 aspects, primordial purity and spontaneous presence. The verse of primordial purity is, whatever arises in pure awareness, unaltered and unconfined, look into the mind that settles by itself, resting naturally. If you recognize the natural clarity, empty and without origin, you'll traverse at once the paths and stages and capture the fruition. This is the direct pointing method of primordial purity.
So how does this direct pointing method, whatever appears to us, whether it is seen, heard, or touched,
all perceptions and experiences everything that manifests. Do not try to alter it. Let it abide naturally and at ease.
This awareness that abides at ease
is also to observe it carefully while it naturally and serenely abides within itself in its own inherent state. This means that when it comes to the nature of our mind, whether it is good or bad, whether it is the Buddha or all sentient beings, whether it is affliction or wisdom, let all things simply abide naturally, just as it is truly meant to be. Within the nature of this natural abiding, engage in inner observation. When you observe inwardly, you recognize what? State of being without origin, self-luminous and empty in nature. This is the kind of realization you will reach. When I explained this part at the time, I said that without origin means the profound wisdom of the Dharmakaya, the fundamental inherent nature that is completely free from all conceptual roots. The self in self-luminous refers to the innate luminosity of one's own nature, which is the wisdom of the Sambhogakaya. As for luminous emptiness, it is the non-duality of emptiness and clarity, the wisdom of the Nirmanakaya that pervades with great compassion. In other words, it is the essence of the three bodies, Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Nirmanakaya. Within the essence of our mind, there is emptiness of its nature, innate luminosity, and pervasive great compassion, or the state of inseparability of emptiness and clarity manifests. At that time, it's just as we often say, if one drinks water, only they know whether it's cold or warm. It's like in Chinese Chan Buddhism, where they say the void is shattered, the earth is leveled. Many things are related to that. Originally, emptiness itself cannot be shattered into pieces. But in that moment, it seems as if our discursive thoughts have completely vanished. But discursive thoughts are not actually found somewhere else apart from this. Emptiness by its nature has nothing that can be destroyed. Yet the very essence of emptiness also manifests in that moment. Such a state can arise, and at this time, one has already surpassed all the merits of the 5 paths and 10 bhumis. There is no need to go through countless eons, step by step. It's not like that. One instantly transcends the entire process of the 5 paths and 10 bhumis, the whole long journey. One attains Buddhahood on the spot, becomes a Dharmakaya Buddha right then and there. That is why in Dzogchen, if one encounters a truly empowered guru and the disciple has great faith, one can attain Buddhahood instantly, achieve enlightenment in this life, become a Buddha in this moment. Sayings like, lay down the butcher's knife and become a Buddha on the spot exist. Such examples are found in both Chan Buddhism and Dzogchen. Such a state can indeed arise. Therefore, this is considered the direct pointing method of primordial purity. The second point is about spontaneous presence. Speaking of spontaneous presence, we haven't recited this verse yet, have we?
Zongzen Kurman Bayans, Yarnojin Tarn Pochin Workerman, Dirk Jones, Tumchut Ningotam, Loser Dipinians, Domania, Torsion, London, Demkarpan, and the Nanjirins Pipi Ranshila. Again, the Malin Joar, Namkuji, Jertum Chola, Wamjurijan, Totian Jagurjun, Snyartop, Kajizam, Jarar Matir Chu.
The second spontaneous presence is like this. While leaving things just as they are, if through the right postures and gazes you experience naturally manifesting space, light spheres, and pure awareness, then dualistic perception, samsara's darkness, will disappear in all-pervading space, and, perfecting the 4 visions, you'll achieve a body of light, the great transference. This is spontaneous presence. When practicing it, first, among the 4 great direct placements of Dzogchen, one recognizes the state of the view of primordial purity without departing from it, and then adopts the posture of the Dharmakaya, the Sambhogakaya posture, the Nirmanakaya posture. You can use any one of these 3 postures. Then, among the 3 ways of gazing, choose any one of the 3 gazes. After that, you can contemplate the stainless space. Regarding the stainless space, which we often talk about, the luminosity of the dhatu of awareness, the luminosity of the empty bindu, the vajra chain of awareness, these three profound principles, just as they are meticulously described in the revered Great Perfection Manjushri and also in the Yeshe Lama. Indeed, within the Yeshe Lama, the crucial section specifically on Tögal is explained in significantly greater and more comprehensive detail. I once spoke with a Lama named Wangden, and when the two of us were discussing the profound Yeshe Lama, Lama Wangden said, actually the Yeshe Lama is quite famous. But the section on primordial purity is actually very brief, just like a single mouthful of food. Most of it is about the practice of spontaneous presence. I said, yes, that's absolutely right. There is indeed much more to learn about the practice of spontaneous presence. There isn't much about primordial purity in the earlier sections, as we've discussed before. It says here, if we use the three types of postures and gazes as taught by His Holiness, the wish-fulfilling jewel, in the profound Great Perfection Manjushri teachings, he meticulously explains the 6 essential points, such as the crucial essential of the field, the essential of appearance, the essential of the gate, and so on. Here it clearly states, if we were to use this particular way of gazing, then we see and experience. What do we experience? Within the self-appearing luminosity of the dhatu of awareness, the luminosity of the empty bindu appears. Within the luminosity of the empty bindu, the vajra chain of awareness arises. If you witness such phenomena, in the end, you merge your own mind, wind and objects of perception into one, and visualize them as a single unity. Ultimately, the darkness of samsara, the duality of subject and object, dissolves completely and utterly into the vast and boundless expanse of the Dharma Dhatu, and then what profound and ultimate state is truly attained. It is the realization of the 4 visions of Tögal, which signifies the vision of the direct recognition of the dharmata, the vision of the increasing experience, the vision of pristine awareness reaching its full extent and complete exhaustion of phenomena into dharmata. These are 4 stages of the Great Perfection, are all fully accomplished. Finally, just like the revered Guru Padmasambhava and the enlightened Vimalamitra, who ultimately attains the profound rainbow body presence, all of the aforementioned teachings of the Great Perfection have now been explained. And then we arrive at the final and conclusive conclusion section of this comprehensive treatise. The beginning, the middle, and the end is also divided into 3 aspects: how to compose a treatise, dedicating the roots of virtue, and the postscript after composing the treatise. It is divided into these 3 aspects. First, how does one compose a treatise? What I have said here, this plain talk arranged in verses, is my heart's advice, although it lacks the poetic turns of phrase that might delight intellectuals. As a spontaneous outpouring from the depths of my mind, it is in the preferred style of the Vidyadharas of the early translations. Here, the punctuation marks may not have been proofread properly, but they can be proofread again later. His Holiness said that, as mentioned above in The Heart Essence, my heart's advice, there are so many verses, and regarding these verses, in fact, His Holiness, with his profound wisdom, meticulously used very plain and accessible language to carefully compose these invaluable texts. These compositions served as profound advice, essential teachings, and pith instructions, offering direct guidance. Although such deeply meaningful teachings do not necessarily contain the elaborate words that are often favored by the widely learned and exceptionally knowledgeable sages, nor are there any particularly beautiful, especially ornate words or poetry. None of these are present. It is expressed in a very plain, clear, and easily understandable way, utilizing exceptionally simple and remarkably straightforward language that is readily accessible to everyone. There is not a lot of particularly refined or literary writing, nor the kind of ornate rhetoric or poetics that would embellish it in various ways, and none of that is present. So, the wise and learned may not necessarily find it appealing, because generally the wise are especially attached to literary style and phrasing. Therefore, the wise may not necessarily be fond of it. However, all of the content within this text is revealed and expressed spontaneously, arising from the wisdom of His Holiness's awakened mind. It manifests and flows forth spontaneously and entirely all at once, not as a direct result of any deliberate fabrication or extensive mental preparation, nor by carefully consulting various external reference materials or by engaging in lengthy discussions with others. It is absolutely not like that at all. Generally, when His Holiness could still see and read characters in the past, he wrote the great commentary on directly pointing to mind nature, directly at that very moment, completing the entire work in a single continuous go without the need for any initial draft. For example, in the past, I saw Khenpo Derpa, when he was writing his commentary on the Beacon of Certainty, he also wrote it all at once in this way, not repeatedly revising it over and over, nor consulting one reference after another. It was not like that. Many great masters of the early translation school demonstrated this as a sign of presence. It can be said that the great Vidyadharas were like this. They did not make selections or rely on conceptual discrimination, nor did they truly depend on all sorts of acquired conceptual judgments in order to analyze or to deeply ponder. It's not really like that. There was no such deliberation, no such choosing or rejecting. So what is this? This is a quality of the supreme realization of Dzogchen in the early translation Nyingma tradition, a characteristic of these great Vidyadharas. It's a truly distinguishing feature. You could really quite indeed say, it's not that others don't have it, it should exist elsewhere too, including among some great masters of the later translation school. It is something that naturally flows from the wisdom of their realization. Many of the teachings, songs of realization, and guidance texts, these do exist. But from a historical perspective, it is indeed the great masters of the past. The lineage disciples of Guru Padmasambhava, many of them received mind termas, some were mind termas, and some naturally arose from their own realization. So when it truly comes to our precious spiritual guru, I often say this, then you might wonder why he says this every day, but in fact it truly is the case. He was a truly extraordinary and exceptionally accomplished master, unlike any other. Indeed, when he was living in this world, he never, ever developed any wrong views or incorrect perspectives. And after he passed away, it became even clearer to everyone. He was truly a living bodhisattva who graciously came into this world to help others. It's just that at the time, it seemed like we think, in fact, the guru was always around. He was diligently teaching the Dharma every single day, but after he departed, we truly came to cherish him even more profoundly. Our deep appreciation for his immense greatness and his profound level of spiritual realization became even more steadfast and unwavering. Let's not talk about other things this time, including this truly rare and very valuable teaching we have indeed now. After reading it, you should fully understand it. Sometimes His Holiness would one breath directly deliver the teaching just like that, in that manner. Once when His Holiness was in France, regarding spontaneous presence we're discussing today, someone in the audience requested, "Your Holiness, could you talk a bit about the practice of Tögal, a teaching on the aspect of spontaneous presence?" No time for translation, and His Holiness felt unaccustomed to it. Normally it translated sentence by sentence, but it was possible to deliver the teaching directly like. It was as if we were reciting, delivering everything in one breath. If the words were recorded afterwards, they would all be exceptionally precious Vajra words, truly priceless. Sometimes you might genuinely wonder why people are all exactly the same, seem the same, and perhaps he doesn't necessarily possess such great merit. It's also indeed quite possible to think in this particular way. But this is just a form of conceptual discrimination. We can allow ourselves to have such discriminating thoughts, but in fact, it's not the case. The reason why this time I am teaching the heart essence, my heart's advice, is that after His Holiness wrote it down, he transmitted it to only a few of us at the time. Perhaps there is some special blessing from a close transmission. And even if there isn't such a very close blessing, the transmission should still indeed be clearly present. If everyone's mind stream receives some of the unique blessings of the wish-fulfilling jewel, His Holiness, perhaps your practice will not encounter any obstacles, or in terms of truly realizing the profound teachings of Dzogchen, you should be able to get even much closer to the ultimate truth. Could this truly be the case? That is also why I decided to transmit this teaching. The second point is the dedication of merit. Through the merit of this, may all beings, without exception, gain perfect sovereignty over the kingdom of the four kayas, and may I too never be separated, even for a moment, from the fortitude of Manjushri, the ever youthful. This means may I rely on the roots of virtue accumulated from the heart essence, my heart's advice, not leaving any behind, to benefit sentient beings. They attain Buddhahood of Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, Nirmanakaya, and Svabhavikakaya. His Holiness said, from now on I too, because before this, His Holiness, at that time it was the 15th day of the 4th month, and we were in Beijing making a pilgrimage to the Buddha's sacred tooth relic, together with the Panchen Lama. Later it seems we went to Wu Tai Mountain and first stayed at Bodhisattva Summit Monastery. We stayed there for approximately 5 or 6 days, and then we went to Shansai Cave. Some sources say we stayed for 21 days or 14 days, but when I calculated it, the timing didn't seem to add up. In my memory, His Holiness stayed in retreat at Shansai Cave for 7 days. It should have been a 7-day retreat, because on the very 15th day, we were still in Beijing, and on the 29th of month, His Holiness met Manjushri Bodhisattva. It was Parinirvana Day of Mipham Rinpoche. When we were at Bodhisattva Peak, he transmitted the treasury of dharmata too and gave an empowerment. There was also the 37 practices of a bodhisattva and a concise stages of the path to enlightenment. Khenpo Sodargye Lodro and me did the translation. Then we went into retreat again. After the retreat ended, he met Manjushri Bodhisattva. At that time, His Holiness sang a precious Vajra song. I had translated this before as well. Afterwards, we left Shansai Cave and went up to the top of the mountain across from it. There, The Heart Essence, My Heart's Advice, was composed. So this profound teaching should be attributed to the great Manjushri Bodhisattva. At that time, His Holiness also said, "Not even for an instant am I separated from the courageous power of Manjushri Bodhisattva." Actually, the power of Manjushri Bodhisattva is not about lifting stones, making things, or moving objects. It's not like that. Because his power is the ability to liberate sentient beings. This courageous power is truly extraordinary. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva and Manjushri Bodhisattva, for us, Manjushri's courageous wisdom and Samantabhadra's enlightened conduct are same in this regard. This is reason explained here. Their way of benefiting sentient beings is truly unique. Therefore, we also make aspirations, and now, relying on such causes and conditions, may we, in all our lifetimes, never be separated from the blessings, wisdom, and presence of Manjushri Bodhisattva, and from the vast and courageous power to spread the Dharma and benefit sentient beings. Everyone can also make such aspirations. You can also dedicate your merits in this way. Now, the third part, what we just discussed was the dedication. The third part is the postscript to the treatise. As for the postscript to the treatise, this is the third day of the 5th month in the Fire Rabbit year, which was year 1987. You see, His Holiness met Manjushri Bodhisattva on the 29th, and then we moved to that mountaintop. You all should go to that mountaintop sometime in the future. Now, there are many prayer flags hanging there. Actually, if you visit the sacred site of Manjushri Bodhisattva, it's very interesting. There are many wonderful stories. At that time, I wrote down some of those wonderful stories. I remember the one that truly left the deepest impression on me was the captivating story of the 500 arhats. There was a venerable monk, I honestly don't remember which specific monastery, I've completely forgotten, who went out to beg for alms, hoping to create 500 arhats. Then he went everywhere to beg for alms. At that time, maybe some iron and copper. In the end, at one place, he made 500 magnificent arhats, but each and every one was very heavy indeed. Back then, there were no means of transportation either. It was very, very far from Mount Wu Tai. He wondered what method he could use to transport the 500 arhats to the monastery. He started to worry again, what should he do? If only these arhats could get up and walk by themselves, how wonderful that would be, he thought to himself. And then all of the arhats actually started to slowly stand up and walk around. They lined up and walked, and the monk was very happy. After arriving at the ancient monastery, all the venerable arhats peacefully settled down. He started counting them, and there were 499. One arhat was missing. He became quite worried once again and went to actively look for it. It turned out that the venerable arhat perhaps wasn't feeling entirely well or something similar to that, and was slowly trailing behind, diligently trying to catch up. When it was almost dark, he reached a riverbank. He seemed to see a woman washing clothes there. The arhat asked, "How far is it from here to the such-and-such monastery on Mount Wu Tai? Can I possibly make it there today?" The woman replied, "Let alone you going alone. Even an arhat made of iron would find it too far to truly reach that distant place. It's probably impossible." The very moment she mentioned the crucial word iron, the venerable arhat couldn't move at all anymore, and consequently ended up staying right by the riverbank, completely stuck. Later, when his disciples came looking for him, they found him there. After they found him, they couldn't move him either. In the end, they built a pavilion at that spot. When they returned to their monastery, there were only 499 left. Later, during the Cultural Revolution, many of them were destroyed. Afterwards, 232 of them, I remember it was 232, were all moved to the present-day Xiantong Temple. Xiantong Temple is the earliest in Han regions. It was built at the same time as the White Horse Temple in Luoyang. At that time, Zhu Falan and others built them together. Xiantong Temple is the oldest. In the end, over 200 venerable arhats. I personally went to see them before. Now I hear that there are still many magnificent arhat halls located nearby. Later, more than 200 of these revered figures were carefully placed inside the ancient Xiantong Temple. All of these beings had supernatural powers. They could easily walk there themselves. The rest were all destroyed anyway. There were quite a lot of stories. For example, the Lantern Manjushri Bodhisattva. Back then, when Emperor Qianlong got lost, he was guided over there, and in the end, it eventually turned into the magnificent Lantern Manjushri over by the revered Jixiang Temple and also at the ancient Shuxiang Temple. The person making the Manjushri statue was unsure how to make it. He was asked to make it when he was feeling especially troubled. Manjushri Bodhisattva appeared in the sky, riding a magnificent green lion. At that very moment, he was actively using what we call sampa, a head made of buckwheat flour. So now the head of the Manjushri Bodhisattva statue at Shuxiang Temple is still made of buckwheat flour, not any other material. It's also the most original one, the most original, authentic one. There's also the Vajra Cave, the sacred Vajra Cave, and the ancient Pheilai Pagoda. Each one of these holds an incredible and inspiring story detailing the various manifestations of Manjushri Bodhisattva. As for the significant teaching platform of Manjushri Bodhisattva, I mentioned it yesterday too, the place above Shansai Cave. That place used to exist, but now it's gone. I heard that there are some individual practitioners. Some practitioners pitch tents and live there. There are people like that now, Ngawang Lodrut Sungme, at the solitary place of Mount Wu Tai in the Han region, on the peak upon which the supreme deity, the youthful Manjushri, turned the wheel of the profound and vast Dharma for tens of thousands of bodhisattvas. In just 23 minutes, it was successfully all that came to mind. This is truly excellent. This significant achievement in the past, I personally have reflected upon. Did not recite the small character at the end as part of the lineage transmission. This was back in 2015. When I recently spoke at the prestigious Rigpa Center in the city of London. It seems I talked about it once at that time. It seems I haven't talked about this teaching at Laronga.
Sonam dei tanche roganya tonani de jana pase kirgana jirano chupai chupun zonen droa
Ma bandangara badna sadarda Ma bandangara badna sadarda Bandangara Banma Sadarda